Hello, everyone. I'm Nick from Fallout Facts, and welcome to the Outta Stimpaks podcast. Right? This is what episode
Hello.
six?
Ooh, I don't
Six?
know. Let's
Yeah,
say six. If it's
six,
not,
six, six. It's somewhere around there.
it is now.
But I'm joined here with my co-hosts Dylan and Oliver. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, obviously.
Ghoul_city, also known as Dylan.
Oliver Ford.
The
So
millennial
formal.
pause.
So formal. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about something really fun, an interesting topic that I know I personally really like, and that is synths from Fallout 4, more specifically in the other Bethesda titles. But yeah, starting to talk about who may or may not be a synth. And that brings into our first question. So obviously, we have hidden synths found throughout Fallout 4, right? Now, this brings up the question is, do we think that if they have a synth component, that is the dead set that they're obviously a synth by the developers? But do we think that Bethesda purposely missed putting in some synth components or just forgot? What's your thoughts on that kind of stuff?
Well, I know with like the NPCs, sometimes they'll just be randomly generated, and
Mhm.
sometimes they won't. So I'd really like to think that some synth components, people know where to find them and pull them out. But maybe later down the line, the Institute may have started hiding the components, maybe just in a different spot once they realize, okay, everyone's ripping out our synth components and be like, oh, look, that guy was a synth, so maybe we should hide these a little bit better if we don't want people finding out. So I'd like to think not everyone has a synth component.
Mm. Okay. That's a cool like headcanon as an answer as to why some certain characters might not have like the synth component. Pretty cool. Oliver,
I
same
think
question.
I think it was I'm getting words out. I remember reading I think I remember reading, I could be making up just in my drunken adult state, is that the basically since are indetectable, it's only via basically is when they're alive, only the Institute can tell the difference and detect them
Mhm.
in like a proper way, like, other than being like told or informed. And basically upon their death it's easy to access it. So I think everyone would have a synth component. I can't because I'm trying to think of the most recent synth is like one who just left. Does Paladin Dance have one? Because I presume he's quite recent.
He does. He does have a synth component.
So like I
Yes.
feel like, but I then kind of feel the point if someone doesn't have one, is that a good indicator? Because you do get Brahmin who have a synth component, and obviously the point that's been made is that it's more likely just a randomized inventory than actually there being synth Brahmin, which makes no sense.
Yeah. No.
So,
Yeah, no. I think it's really interesting because then we get into like the fan theories. Like, do you guys know Glory from the Railroad and how her like whole mantra is like she was a synth survive. She's a survivor and she's went through the process of the railroad and she tells a whole like backstory. She's the only person like a main character within the railroad that tells like a full backstory about how she's a synth, but she doesn't have the component. Like she doesn't drop it at all. Um,
Hmm.
and that has just raised so much like theories and suspicions that did they like forget to put the component like on her body? Is that the did or is she not really a synth? And of course that opens up the gate of if they forgot it on her, who else did they forget one on?
That does make a lot of sense, and I'm sure with something like that of someone thinking they're synth, as far as I understand the mental health in the Fallout Wasteland, it's not a lot of institutions set up for mental health. I'm sure it's a little things are probably people probably aren't feeling too good mentally. So I'm sure there's plenty of instances where people are convinced that they're a synth. Um, as like maybe some sort of coping mechanism for their actions of maybe, oh, I had to wipe out the settlement because the institute made me do it. I mean, it wasn't
Mm,
my choice. So I'd like to think maybe sometimes that plays a role. Just people's mental health um, plays a role in their identity with, since maybe with Glory. Maybe she's got something going on and she's convinced she's a synth.
Oh yeah, she just mentally convinced herself she's a synth, kind of
Yeah.
like what's her name from Far Harbor? Kasumi? Kasumi?
Kasumi?
Kasumi.
Let's double check.
How to pronounce?
Kasumi. Yep.
Kasumi is
Yep.
Kasumi.
Yeah, mechanic. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's not a synth, even though she's convinced she is.
Yeah, she's convinced she is.
Yeah, because that's the whole theming of Far Harbor is the idea that like you could be and you just don't know it because Dima's just trying to convince uh the sole survivor that he could be a synth as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple theories with that just going right off the bat with as soon as you step out of your little cryostasis, you can use VATS, and people have pointed that as evidence of you being a synth.
Mm-hmm. That and how I like how Dima's logic is that the only thing you remember is the day of the war, the bombing happening. Like that's the
Yeah,
only thing
that's your
they
only
remember.
memory.
Uh-huh.
Do you guys buy into that with the Soul Survivor as a synth? Because we can bash another theory. We've done it before. We just bash someone's theory. That's on the table.
Whoever made this theory is an idiot. What a dumb theory.
Let's
So we did with the
deconstruct
first
this one by
episode,
one.
isn't it? This is kind of a shit theory.
I'll do better.
I was so excited about that. I was like, "Oh my god, this is so cool!" And then,
The more we got into it, we were like, oh wait, actually, this
Hang on.
doesn't make any sense. Oh man, I don't know. What do you think, Oliver? What's your? Do you subscribe to that theory
I
or no?
I don't see how it works in the sense that I think fundamentally, if the point is going to be made that like, is the point saying that the memory's implanted in you when you're in the vault? Is that the point they're trying to make?
Yes, yes.
Because you obviously you can be a pre-war synth.
No, I think the idea is the institute. The institute did it like whenever they got Sean. Like they came back and were like, all right, well, let's
It's
put
just
another one in. You know.
I just think logistically it doesn't make any sense. Like I don't see why the institute would. Obviously, Sean is like the fundamental part. He's basically skin tissue and samples is what makes the rest of them. So I don't get why they'd be like, done it, run back to the vault, then grab you, bin ya, then basically recreate you. Maybe it's a test. Maybe they thought the first test should be kind of the parent. But again, I don't. There seems to be a lot of kind of weirdness as in it just seems it doesn't make any sense. I think for the institute to do that to basically replicate you and put you back, and this kind of that was Sean's kind of whole idea is actually to test you in more ways than he's saying. Is to basically say, well, actually, you weren't just a kind of test in the sense of like, what would you go and do? Would you come find me? Is basically saying, would a synth have the same maternal or paternal instincts to come find their child? And almost replicating that personality experiment they did with Dima and Nick in a different way in a relationship prospect to basically say, would you have the same drive? So I can't see the reason in that sense, but I think logistically it doesn't make any sense from like an institute organizational standpoint.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we don't really know too much about the institute, really, like what their end goals are. So I guess I don't know. It's hard to say because again, we don't really understand what the institute's goals are. I think even if you side with them,
You don't
there's no
understand.
like
You can't
end game
understand
for
our
them.
goals.
Yeah, maybe I'm not playing the 4D chess. And I also want to rewind a little bit. I don't know if you misspoke or if you meant to say this, but you said pre-war synth. Are you implying synths were being made before the bombs dropped?
Not. I think. I think there's a couple points. I think synths could be possible before the war. So the institute, yeah, sure, they're Gen 1s, Gen 2s, Gen 3s. Gen 3s being literally a person with basically the synth component pretty much being like the interface that makes them like not a full human. But there's nothing to suggest that the pre-war CIT wasn't capable of something akin to this, and the institute basically just picked up the scraps and just from what they had left and managed to eventually cobble together what was the synth program, and that before the war there wasn't something similar. that they just had to repiece back together again. So maybe before the war.
Okay, yeah, I see what they're saying. They've had to get the idea from somewhere, like they with all their tests. Like they were, I don't know. I feel like the institute just weren't sitting around a table taking shots and going like, okay, guys, what if we made synthetic gorillas? And another guy was like, let's do it with people. Like they probably got the idea from some
ramen.
experiment that was already in process. But I don't know. There could be something off that.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
people were trying beforehand.
I don't know how much I would subscribe to the idea um that they kind of like de-evolutionized, like they were like super advanced and then they got really shitty and then the institute had to like rebuild them back up. um I don't know how much I could see that happening, but maybe they had like those shitty models, like the Model 1 or whatever, like pre-war. Because do we have a date on whenever Nick Valentine is like created, or no, his backstory's like for
I'm not sure.
most time.
He's Gen like 2.5, isn't he? He's a bit of a weird one.
And the Gen 1 would make sense because I mean there's Assaultrons that were made before the war that have their
Yeah.
duties. There's Protectrons, so you can program, okay, this robot's for killing, this robot's for cleaning, this robot's for traffic or mechanics. So that makes sense. I mean it's just a humanoid frame more so
Yeah,
than this.
like realistically, what we're talking about here is basically just a skin suit. Because the Gen 3s, like I think a lot of people forget, Gen 3s aren't just kind of like a bit of skin on a metallic frame. They are a fully flesh and blood creature.
Yeah, it's just
they are literally human, other than the fact that they have a synth component in their head that like basically transmits and makes them the synth. That's the artificial part. But like when I say like when you say about de-evolutionize, whatever, is before the war they could have had like slapped some like synthetic skin onto a robotic frame, a Gen 0 of sorts. It could be that basically they saw the kind of inefficiencies of it when they started making their kind of when they picked up the scraps of what was left of this program of the survivors and saying that there was this program. They messed around, put skin on it, but we didn't see the point of doing that.
see I guess that's one of like
Okay.
the things I really like about Fallout 4 is it makes you sort of question where consciousness is, life is, because you have the Brotherhood of Steel saying these are abominations, they're machines. Yet at the same time, you can form a relationship with someone like Kyrian. Your character falls in love with them, and she falls in love with you. So where do you draw this line of what's a person? I don't know. It's a little off topic, but that's just I don't know. One of the things I love about Fallout 4 is it makes you question that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, are we not all made in God's image? Can we not come together, synth and man?
So bouncing off the perhaps there were Gen 1 synths before the war. Just want to shoot this by you guys. Would the Enclave have their hands on synths or technology similar to synths because they have AI, like President Eden, Mobius in Fallout 76, I think he's called, and they were kind of the shadow government.
The only thing
they have technology to synths.
The only thing I would quickly interject with is Eden was not an intentional AI. The Zax's computers were basically, it was almost like a side effect of them being so intelligent that they like evolved into becoming that. But Modus, I think, is a great example of that. Kind of like they had great, like they developed what was a personality even before the war.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of see a point.
I think if they definitely had I think if they had the technology back then, they would definitely have the Enclave. Definitely would have it. It's just a matter of debate if they had some like pre-version of synths.
But also on how they'd see it, because if the Enclave encountered a Gen 3 synth, they'd probably be like, this is an abomination, because obviously pure-blooded humans, like God-fearing Americans, and then they encounter a synth, they're probably thinking, what is that? Like, it's not even radiation, it's not even like tainted by radiation, it's not even a person. so they probably hate it. So I can imagine. But then if they use like assaultrons and stuff, which I assume they would, I'm really curious where they would draw that line of, is it too much of a person to us think it'd be a tainted person? Do we care because it's a robot, not really life? So again, it's really on Enclave how they do things.
That's actually true. Does the Enclave actually have robots that we've seen?
Sentry bots and
that's true.
Yeah, they
Spy
do.
bots.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
And they use
But-
they use like heavily thinking like computers. Even if Zax wasn't intentional, he was a supercomputer, and as was like Modus was like
They-
their
yes,
personality
yes,
assisted
yes,
them.
yes.
So obviously
Yes,
didn't
yes,
mind
yes,
it.
I'm right. I completely forgot about the bunker in Fallout 76. And
I
just
would-
completely filled. Yeah.
I would think that the Enclave would, if they had their hands on the technology for Gen 3, since they totally would use it. Because,
Mhm.
one, they're not tainted by radiation or any kind of mutations. They can make them whenever they want. Two, they're not really getting fresh recruits all the time. Gene pool starting to
So you make
over
them.
200 years. So
Yeah.
why not make more? You know, you don't want your honest to god red-blooded Americans to die in the waste. So send synths. I think they'd use them. And you know, with sorry, I'm rambling again, but Fallout 3, you know, sure you could say, oh, it's just a gameplay mechanic. The Enclave don't stop coming. Where are they all coming from? Where are these numbers coming from?
Oh,
Hundreds of Enclave soldiers? Maybe they already are.
I like that.
Perhaps.
You know what would be the coolest mashup ever? The Enclave and the Institute. Like if they teamed up, that would just be
That'd be horrible
That'd
for
be s-
everyone.
that'd be horrible. But can you imagine? That would
then-
be like
And then the think tank
legendary.
be like, let's get involved.
Oh my
Oh
god.
god. Think Tank versus Institute X Enclave.
Oh.
I do like the idea though. Though, like the Enclave are just look at the Gen 3 synths, and the think tank be like, what
That's the best you could do.
we're trying to remake America. And we got like these brains in jars, like doing experiments. We got these like people robot things. God, I hate
Think
it.
Tank would be like, oh, you think
I miss the oil
Gen
ring.
3 synths are an abomination and affront to God and unethical? Watch what we
Hold my beer.
hold
You
my
ever seen a skeleton in a suit before?
yeah. Perpetual, not exactly living and not exactly death, like a constant state of sleep paralysis. We're just gonna keep this guy in here.
Oh man.
I think it's such a but actually I really like this prospect of different factions' reactions to things like synths because
Mm-hmm.
I like the point, the idea that the Enclave would be like almost more pragmatic, being like, what if it barks like a person, is pure like a person? Could they like? I can't actually think of because they don't have the kind of protection of humanity aspect that their brother Steel does. So would they care, or would they be like, actually, for all intents and purposes, if they want to think like a soldier and they are a human, then oh well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see where like different factions draw the line of like, yeah,
Hmm.
it's not bad. Yeah. Because it's really interesting, like how I mean, obviously it makes sense that everyone in the Commonwealth are completely anti synths, right?
Mhm.
But it's just interesting if you got like a synth and you placed it like in the middle of New Vegas. Like what would the NCR think? What would the Legion do?
Oh god, Legion would hit it with a stick like everyone else.
Oh man.
That's usually their go-to response to something they don't understand is we
Just
need
hit
to
it with
get rid of
stick.
it.
Hit it with the stick. Hmm.
So a nice little tangent is
No tangent.
so we talked about the sole survivor being synth, right? And I know in Fallout 4 there's a lot of important secret synths of, oh, this person was a synth the entire time, like Dance, and then you have your
Mongolia.
synthetic Sean. When you first meet him, you're like, oh my god, that's Sean. Turns out to be a synth. So something I thought was a little cool is throughout the game, same with the randomly generated loot, but there are characters who are synths. They have the component, but it just doesn't have anything to do with the story at all. It's just they happen to be a synth, and there's no quest revolving around it. There's no one going like, oh, you gotta take this person out, they're a synth. And one person I thought that really stood out with that, and I don't think anyone mentions it. And the only way you find out is if you kill them, is Sturgis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't know he was a synth for the longest time, and then I was scrolling on the Fallout wiki, and it said that he drops a synth component. I thought that was kind of cool.
It is. Sturgis one. What's her name? Magnolia.
Magnolia. Yeah, the
That's it.
singer in the third rail.
Yeah, Magnolia. She's one. Trash Can Carla's another one, I think.
Or she's
she's a synth informant.
Or is it Cricket? Oh, okay. Is it Cricket then? Isn't one of them like a synth?
So all of the traveling merchants are all synth informants. So they actually don't want the synth to escape because they're snakes.
Gotcha. Okay. Snakes.
Although all the residents of the slog are in fact synths, so you should shoot them at every opportunity.
Why?
Wipe out the slog at every opportunity.
Confirmed. Oliver is racist against ghouls.
You got a problem with ghouls, buddy? you got a problem. Next time you're in Vegas, I'll show you what.
Don't show up to Vegas next time.
So with that, do you guys have any people you want to suss out as a possible synth, or like any kind of like headcanon of who's a synth? And it doesn't just have to be Fallout 4. The Institute's been around for a while, so really it could be anyone.
So potentially one that I've thrown back to our pre-war thing, and it's a bit more rogue one, but it's not one I've not heard before, is Moldova. So obviously the question's been asked, how is she still around even after the war? We've not had a definitive answer. Maybe cryo, because they do hint at cryo chambers and everything at the end of the Fallout Season 1. But I think it's definitely a question to be asked: is could she perhaps be one of the kind of the early skin-on suits, or even like a very offshoot version of kind of the CIT doing such synth programs, and perhaps did like programs across the country, and maybe she was one of them.
Yeah, that would make sense, because I'd like to think, these different scientific institutions are, sharing information and being like, okay, guys, how can we help each other out? Maybe there is another. Same with a possibility, the Enclave having the technology. Maybe there is another synthetic program out there in the wastelands.
Well, another point as well, actually, is. Oh.
No, go ahead.
I was just going
to say that goes back to the I'm just going for it. That just goes back into the theory that we said before, that it was a pre-war, right? And then like multiple other agencies or whatever had the ability to do so.
I was going to say as well is obviously if you don't want to go down the route of the pre-war thing, and obviously because there's I think some trepidation regarding that, is that Nick himself, his memories come from pre-war. They took a brain scan of him at CIT, and then after the war, they then implemented him into a synth body. So with Moldova as well, perhaps she didn't survive the war. Perhaps they did a brain scan of something of that like, and that simply after the war, that's when she. Because obviously the Fallout TV show is like much further in the future, like beyond the Institute, the Gens 1 to 3. So perhaps actually she is a Gen 3 synth, but actually the situation is that using a brain scan they had from another organization, they used memories of her, and that she simply just kind of continued on her life in the same way that Nick eventually does when he basically continues on being a detective.
Okay, yeah. I'm seeing it. I just want to remind the viewers at home, when you listen to this podcast, make sure your home is wrapped in tinfoil. Make sure you wrap your head, your skull, with tinfoil, because the Institute will be sending waves to your brain to try to convince you that we're wrong and that we sound crazy. We're not crazy. Everything we're saying is true. Anytime you get a thought thinking that we're not making sense, it's the Institute. You need more tinfoil. I just want to put that out there before we continue.
Love how you say
that brings us to our sponsorship segment, sponsored by Tinfoil.
Just tinfoil.
Just tinfoil, no brand. Just
all the companies came together in
the industry of tinfoil.
They gave me an Olive Garden gift card, so here we are.
Yeah, Olive Garden gift card.
Big tinfoil came in clutch. Saves me $25 on Valentine's Day. So you're sussing Moldaver out as a synth.
Very sus.
What about you, Nick? You got anyone?
Oh man, that's such a good question. Ah, I don't know. There's just so many different. I think I'm just more to the idea that I think that the developers more or less forgot to put synth components on some people. I firmly believe that Glory is indeed supposed to be a synth. I really do think she is. I think I'm sticking with my gun on that. I know that's a boring answer, but I legit think she was just forgotten about.
Bethesda's tiny little forgetting something is causing people to go on all these deep theories about who's synthetic and who's not, and you got some programmer at Bethesda over there just being like, "Oh God, I forgot to place that." Didn't I?"
Yeah, some guys going on a rant on Reddit, and some developers, some developers
I
just
got the
like,
armor. I
oh
got the
fuck,
minigun, and oh God.
oh shit, just staring at the screen.
So I have a couple of culprits
Mm.
who I think are synths. One of them is going to be Travis, the Diamond City radio host.
And today
Um,
is the radio. Yay.
yeah,
Diamond
him.
City Radio.
See, and that's the thing is with synths, especially the coursers, right? Like X6, I think is his name. The one he can have the companion. I don't know. I don't
Something
play
like
the Institute ending.
X688 or something? That sounds
X688. That sounds right. He's very devoid of emotions, right? He doesn't really care about anything. Um, so you have someone like Travis who could be a Gen 3 synth, could be a plant. I don't think he is, but you have this extremely awkward person who's trying to be a radio host. You have someone struggling with emotions and trying to figure them out because he'll say like some really screwed up stuff, but say it in just this awkward, rambling tone. And then like another thing is he never talks about his past, never talks about any events that's happened to him. No one in Diamond City really talks about his past or where he came from or how he became a radio host because you have this guy who should not be a radio host who is in charge of a radio station that goes all across the Commonwealth, right? And then you do his quest. And as soon as you finish his quest, it's like a snap. He's a completely different person. Like maybe something got rewired or something kicked in and made him that charismatic radio host he was planted to be. Again, we got our tinfoil hats on, right? I totally think Travis is a synth, 100%. Just his personality change, it's too fast, it's too strong. It's just sussy. And one more thing, right? Playing a little bit of Fallout 4. I'm sick of Diamond City, right? All these people are mean to me. They're mean to Hancock, right? Because he's a ghoul. So I run around blasting, right? Suspiciously, Travis has a lot of health. He is hard to kill. If you're not using explosives, for some reason, like you have the guards who are armored, trained soldiers, and then you have Travis who has all this extra health, and he's in a varsity jacket.
So you did some research for this episode. Is that
I
what
might
you're
be
saying?
pushing it. I might be pushing it right there, but he's got a lot of health for no reason. Just want to put that out there.
I feel bad for Travis.
I don't.
Like, imagine being a little bit anxious, having anxiety, struggling, and you're like, "He's a synth."
Yeah, it's too awkward.
Like, oh, he has to be a little bit strong in a fight. Get him! He's a synth.
Yeah, he's
Literally like the Salem witch trials here. Like, man's a little bit awkward. Let's burn
Well,
him.
Must be
if
said.
we tear open his skull, we'll be able to find out whether he's a synth or not. All right.
Did
Where-
you drop a
where
synth
do they-
component?
No, where do they keep the synth component? Where does that get stored?
I think it's
Isn't
the must be the brain.
it?
Okay, so we rip open his brain to see if he's a synth. If there's no component, oops, we made a mistake. And if there is, we were right.
Rip off his brain. Nothing there. Must be a Gen 4. He's a Gen 4.
It's a Gen 4 synth.
Ooh,
Just like Glory. A Gen 4 synth.
Hmm.
I do have one more.
All right, go on.
Is that you?
Madison Lee. Madison Lee is a synth.
All right, let's hear this one.
Okay, so Madison Lee, when you find her in Fallout 3, is in Rivet City, right?
Hmm.
Who else is in Rivet City? Right. Zimmer and Harkness. Harkness being a synth, and Zimmer being an envoy from the Institute to find Harkness. Okay. When you ask Madison Lee about Dr. Zimmer, she doesn't care for him, right? She don't like him. She's got a little bit of disdain for him. So, yeah, I wrote down more notes on my phone, actually. Pull these up.
Yeah, so far your reasoning is like, well, she lives in the
She
same
lives in
city.
Rivet City, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is
You know,
Rivet City a synth?
I just synth call it. Yeah,
It
synth
could
calling.
be. It could be.
You know
So,
who else is who also lives in Rivet City? Trini, who is a prostitute within Rivet City.
why would the Institute make something like that?
Is
You
that
see, now we're going into the ethics of things, right?
is that the end product of Fisto? Is that what Fisto is supposed to be? The final form of Fisto? It's a synth.
So she works on Project Purity with James. James dies. Project Purity gets restarted. Everything is all swell. She's already established she doesn't like the Institute, right? And the Institute definitely seems like a group of people that when they do take someone in, they keep them at a arm's distance, like Kellogg. Yeah, he was a mercenary from the outside. They took him in kinda, they gave him some perks, but still, at the end of the day, they kind of kept him at a distance from the heart of the operation. Project Purity goes off. Lyons died because Synths Airlines assassinated him. That we established as canon. So you have that happen, and all of a sudden, Madison Lee just goes, "Well, time to work for the Institute." After I said I don't like them, and they don't really take people in all the time. So now all of a sudden they're gonna throw me in to the heart of the operations of the Institute, make me a scientist, and I'm working there. All of a sudden now, taking in someone from the outside like that, someone who doesn't like them, I'm gonna do it. Why would the Institute do that if they haven't replaced her and they don't have maybe like a kill switch, right? Or influencing her, putting these thoughts in her head of, hey, I need to go join the Institute.
Yeah, I mean,
You hear
we
me
did
now a little bit more?
because we did discuss this last episode. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge for anyone who hasn't
Yeah.
watched that. That we think the Brotherhood of Steel have been infiltrated by Synths,
Hmm.
aka Sarah Lyons and other members. So was Madison Lee one of them? Because that is a good point. Because why? You're right. Like they don't openly take a lot of new people.
Yeah, and they usually kind of use them and lose them, like with Kellogg.
Mm-hmm.
But then you
Let
probably
me,
got
let me make sure.
the other thing I would say is that Madison Lee is quite intelligent. She literally grows like fresh like veg and fruit that isn't like occurring. So she's clearly intelligent enough, and they probably know of her because their proximity to the Rivet City and knowing of their work. So, and then
Mhm.
obviously following Project Purity, that's a hell of a scientific achievement that she was involved with. So to be fair, if there's any kind of accolade she could achieve to get their notice, it's basically turning the basin into a fresh water source. So I think, and also the institute isn't a radiation-free zone either, in the sense that like none of them are pure, and they're also aware of it. That's why they have to go get Sean, is because they themselves have been contaminated. So that wouldn't be a concern for them either about letting people in. It's just because Kellogg was like a loose cannon, and they saw him as kind of like mentally inferior. But she's quite smart, so I can kind of see them being like, you know what you're doing, come aboard.
Yeah, I mean, she's in charge of the advanced systems. Or, no, she's not in charge of it. I'm sorry, but she is still in
No,
their
she's the head.
advanced systems. Is she the head?
She is the head. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then yeah,
don't
she's
know.
in charge of the advanced systems, which is like their weapons, teleportation, all their special projects. So that's I don't know. I feel like personally, if I was a secret underground scientific society that wanted to constantly destabilize the wasteland, I wouldn't be bringing, even as smart as they are, I wouldn't be bringing someone in and saying, "You're in charge of our death machine." Like I wouldn't be doing that. Maybe I would.
But it's a 10-year gap between Flight 3 and 4. That's a lot of time to kind of be like in the vicinity. It's not. I don't think it's obviously. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's particularly clear how long the Institute has been around River City in terms of looking for Harkness or even being there in general. So Zimmer could have had more exposure interaction with her, and perhaps in that time they did develop some sort of relationship in that 10 years, and to the point where they're kind of going, actually working alongside you, seeing like Project Purity happen. Like that's enough to be like, actually, you come back with us. Because she seems to, if I remember correctly, she doesn't like River City very much. I think it's like the only source of science for her, but she's very anti it. So I think she'd be quite willing to go herself.
Yeah. Yeah, and with the Brotherhood of Steel kind of going off the deep end, it could be, yeah.
Well, she's probably thought, if you believe what the terminals imply, which is that the Brotherhood of Steel stole the power source at River City to power the Pridwin, which is something that's implied in the terminals. Basically, they said they got from an old aircraft carrier, and they don't suggest they did an alternative. She could have had like no other choice if like the River City was made inert. That she's like, where am I going to go? The Institute are like,
no other lab.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm hearing your counter arguments. I'm hearing them.
but they could have changed her along the way. They could have been like, upgrade.
Yeah. How would you feel about being replaced?
It's also, I just think about it, it's not. I think I always envisioned when I first started hearing about Gen 3, thinking it was an upgrade, but it's not. You're still flesh and blood. You just have a synth component, and you might be controlled by them, but you not really an upgrade by any means, actually.
That could, because if Madison Lee cares more about science rather than helping, I could see her kind of being like, I don't really have any morals. I'll go join the Institute because they have the best lab.
I think that's literally
I was gonna say, isn't that the persuasion check you make to try to get her to join the Brotherhood of Steel again?
Yeah.
Is that literally like, well, they don't you want to help to make something better really with cool. The better technology? And she's like, yeah.
Big robot. Take it or leave it. Or you can threaten to kill her.
Yeah, that's another way.
You can always do that. No, I think that's once she already leaves. You take her there, and they're like, she says like, let it be Liberty Prime, and you can be like, I'm gonna throw you off the Pridwin. Or no, McCready suggests throwing her off the Pridwin. That's what.
Well, we can see what kind of gameplays you kind of do. The murderous.
I play as chaotic good. That's my go-to. Chaotic good.
Good.
Look at this generation was on their phones.
As the oldest one.
Everybody's on their phones, probably scrolling the Facebooks.
Scroll the.
I was just bullying kids on Omegle.
Oh. I don't think Omegle exists.
It is in England. It is. They're a couple of
they got those
couple of years behind. They haven't got that
sickos out there.
Is there anything else we wanted to discuss?
We went over completely destroying the Sean theory. So we got that. We got my tinfoil rants.
Oh, is that on the list?
Yeah, that's on my list.
Tinfoil to get sponsorship.
In all caps.
Olive Garden coupon.
Make joke about Olive Garden. Oh, it's in there.
That's in there. Okay, that's checked off.
We mentioned the fact that if you suffer with anxiety, you're probably a synth.
Yeah. If you have any kind of
and heaven forbid you have like an epiphany or you get your confidence boosted, probably a synth.
Probably synth.
Well, if you're ever having an issue like that, and you think you're synth, you just rip open your brain, feel around for a component.
And if you're actively recluse and people don't know much about you, you're probably a synth.
If you're shy, you're synth.
Yeah. if you happen to work for like a better organization because your place is a hole, you probably say.
I want to throw out one more tinfoil theory.
Oh god.
Tenpenny is a synth. Okay. Truth bomb has
Okay.
been dropped, right?
Okay.
Tenpenny is a synth. 1.
If you're British, you're a synth.
Oh, that makes a lot of
Okay, now we're on a 2.
sense.
Number 2. We don't really have a lot of backstory. Again, backstory, right? Because synths don't really have memories, right? Or they have very few memories, and there's just all this blankness between. 2. We have no backstory on where he came from and how he. Do we have information on how he acquired the tower? Or was he just lucky?
He said he does say he came from the UK. He basically makes a statement. He makes a statement about how the UK is like way far worse at the moment than the US. Is why he came over to the US in the first place.
Yeah,
So he's
for financial opportunities. Didn't he say that?
yeah. He's like, oh, but I don't know how he got the tower. I really don't. But I think he must have like some group or mercenaries or some enough caps. I don't know. But
Where did he get the wealth from? If the UK is in such this worse condition, he comes over, and assuming they don't use caps in the UK, unless he's coming over with supplies.
I'm assuming he came over with something he could trade because he must have something because he's dressed well. I'm assuming before when he's in the UK, he must have something, some currency, some supplies. That's a rich person he managed to get a lot of in his like bunk or whatever. He was like looking around like this is a shell. And then the nukes hit, and he's like, it's still a shell. Then he went across the US and was basically like, let me trade off what I've got. Here's some caps, whatever. Hired a mercenary group, or maybe they came with him. Like some of his own guards came from the UK with him, and they took a tower. Is that there you go? I think he says he's from the.
He does.
Wouldn't it make sense, or not sense, but could you see this as an institute experiment of planting someone to be the head of a settlement? Give them a bunch of wealth, give them mercenaries, make them a head of a settlement to be able to then manipulate people that come in to live there. Because most of the people who live there are like, oh yeah, it's dirty and gross outside. We're great here. And then also the institute testing of how much money does it take for someone to do the most horrible thing possible, which is setting off another nuke. Yeah. The Institute could probably just be just as cruel as Vault-Tec, depending on how you look at it. Their ethical experiments with making people isn't very nice. No one really asks for that. I don't know. There's just the Institute definitely has some ethics issues, and I could see them running an experiment to see how much money does it take to do the worst possible thing, which is something Tenpenny does. That's all the evidence I have. I have nothing else. Just mere speculation and rambling.
Expect nothing less.
I have an idea in my head. I have no evidence to back it up.
It does bring up an interesting point, though, Dylan. I will give you this: that the idea is because if you kill Harkness, he doesn't drop a synth component or anything, right?
Let's check my brain real quick.
Because I don't believe he does. Because if that's the sense, then who's to say any character in Fallout 3 could or could not be a synth?
Because drops they just didn't an ear.
Oh,
for Contract Killer because he's a good guy.
Killer. Yeah, so he doesn't drop a synth component. So either that makes it so Harkness is actually not a synth, or they just don't have synth components in Fallout 3, which probably is the likely case. But I'm just checking it. Question up. I don't believe he does, but
don't think he does either.
For fact checker, yeah.
He drops an Android component.
I misremembered as well.
Oh yeah, because you bring it around.
I'll cut this part out so I don't look so stupid.
Oh, he has a Android component.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Harkness, Armitage,
edit that bit in,
and Dr. Zimmer. So all of them there in Rivet City, all the people coming from the Institute drop a component.
Oh, wait, Dr. Zimmer does too?
Yep, Dr. Zimmer will drop one if he dies.
Really?
Yep.
How did I not know this?
because you're an evil person. You like,
And I've never killed Dr. Zimmer.
yeah, that's
Yes,
fine.
Timmer, at your 7.
Yeah,
You,
sure. I'll
you,
go kill
you
that
didn't
guy.
gun him down when you saw him. You're like, oh, this guy's in his suit with his bodyguard. I bet he's
Wait,
got
who was
money.
who was the other person? You said Harkness, Dr. Zimmer, and who?
Is a guard, isn't he?
Armitage. His
Oh, the other.
his bodyguard.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it even says on the wiki, Armitage is a third generation synth bodyguard
Huh. How did I not know Dr.
who is also
Zimmer?
quiet and reserved, like a shy person.
Huh. I am kind of dumbfounded that Dr. Zimmer is a synth.
And he drops a finger.
He drops a finger.
Yep, because he's
When
bad.
do you... Oh. Huh. I
Good people don't have fingers.
yeah, but explains so much. Explains so much. Wow. I did not know that.
We're gonna call this episode "Dylan Goes on a Nonsensical Synth Rant." He suspects everyone of being the synth.
It's a long ass title.
The synth witch hunts.
Is everyone a synth? Question mark, question mark.
They could be.
Okay, so if that's the case, then you have to use the same kind of argument that the developers didn't add Android components to everyone. Yeah.
Excuse me. I don't know.
Hmm.
Again, I'd really like to think that I don't know. Maybe the synth components are put in different spots sometimes, or they just forgot.
Lazy writing or lazy developers? You decide.
Are they playing 5D chess, or are they just
Or-
playing checkers and they forgot? We
Well,
don't know.
I would, just to kind of be a fly in the ointment for the Zimmer one.
fuck.
What kind of
What kind of
phrase is
what
that?
kind of
No,
saying is that?
no.
You
Stop,
don't.
stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, explain
Yeah.
that. Explain "fly in the
What
ointment,"
does
please.
that mean?
Means you have a lovely ointment and then the fly lands on it, and it makes you want to
What?
punch. It makes you want to punch a cat.
Wait, is that actually a saying? Dude,
No, it
why is
can't
that
be. It
actually? No,
can't
that
be.
actually is. Why is
fly
that a
in the-
saying? What
I
the
don't say before.
Never heard of that.
A minor
Well, if you look up
irritation
fly
that
in the
spoils the
ointment.
enjoyment of something.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. There you go.
Huh. Anyway,
Uh,
continue with your Dr. Zimmer statement.
So looking through in the game files, Harkness is specifically referred to as android synth. Zimmer is specifically referred to as human. So, and it's like there is a distinction in the game files that one is human, one isn't. So I think you could probably lean to the idea. The problem is the inventory doesn't suggest where it was. So is it possible Zimmer held some sort of component to connect up with? There's also nothing suggestive about how the Institute have the means to detect and interact with other synths. So the Institute are the only people who are able to detect other synths that way, because they have the means to connect with a hidden component without means of killing them. So it's possible that the Android component, what he has, maybe is kind of the detector to his receiver, and that's how he knew he was in the vicinity.
Or maybe that too, and maybe Harkness wasn't the only android they were looking for, and they found the first one. Yeah, maybe he just kept it in his pocket, and they got another one. So that does bring back all those raiders who have a synth component. Are they cannibals who were eating someone? They're like, oh god, what is this? And they thought it looked cool, and they put it in their pocket. Same with Brahma. Did a Brahmin eat a synth component? So maybe not every synth component we find.
Brahmin are well known to eat people.
Hey, when you get hungry, you get hungry. I skipped lunch once, and
You ate a person?
I'm pretty close.
Yeah, fly in the ointment.
I thought about it.
Fly in the ointment.
Yeah, it would have been a big fly in their ointment.
Huh. Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm. All right, we get to wrap up. I'm just absolutely dumbfounded, but I just didn't know about Zimmer. Well, that he had a component, and then the idea is he's not a synth
He's not a
because he's
synth,
just
yeah.
holding it. Yeah, I don't know. There's just so much like weird like hidden reference details. So do you have a list of? Is there like a list of like who is labeled as an android in
I'm pretty sure. Who
Fallout 3?
is a synth in Fallout?
3. Who is shit in Fallout 3?
So we have Harkness in Armitage.
Wow, didn't know that.
I mean,
And then Fallout 4, we have Amelia Stockton, Art, Aster, Brooks, Cog, Cole. Oh, these are a lot of art hardware guys. Eve, so they have some synth scientists. The scientist, Gabriel, who is a Raider leader, I believe.
Yep, of Libertario.
See, now Glory is marked as a synth on the wiki.
Yeah, because it's such
G781.
yeah, it's set because it's such up for debate. Like if you go for like the like you know how Fallout New Vegas has that like not like unofficial like mod patch that
Yeah,
added a bunch of stuff. Fallout 4 has the same thing, and they added that a synth component to her.
I see.
But she is she I mean she is
She's marked
not
in the game file.
identified. What's that?
In the game file, she's marked as a synth.
She is? So
Ooh,
interesting.
so they forgot.
So
Or,
open up.
Again, maybe they moved with the synth, but
Mm,
maybe that one was an Earth arm. I don't know. It does further reinforce the fact. And again, it's one of the big themes Fallout 4, I feel, in my opinion, Fallout 4 touches on, which is anyone could be a synth
oh yeah, totally.
at any
Totally.
time. Overnight, you can become
Anyone
a
could be
synth.
a synth.
So what's your backstory, Oliver?
even
I don't
you.
think we've heard. I don't think we've heard your backstory yet.
Backstory.
Yeah.
April 5th, 2007, what were you doing? And why? See, this guy's a synth. Me?
Yeah.
I was probably picking my nose and then picking my ass.
In that order.
Maybe.
Ooh.
Maybe not.
Ooh.
That's what I was doing in 2007.
Little too awkward to be real.
Ooh.
I think I have crippling anxiety. So you must be
Do you struggle with mental health? Are you a
You're a
synth?
Have you ever said you could be not a real person?
This would be a great episode for like one of those like what was that one, like Better Health?
Better Health.
Yeah, that would be a great episode for that.
Wait, this brings us to our sponsor, Better Health.
If you start questioning your state of being and existence,
You're
Do you
probably
ever get like,
you're gonna
do you ever feel
respond.
anxiety and imposter syndrome? That's because you're an imposter. You're not a real person.
You literally are. You're not you. The real you died 3 years ago. You're just a replacement. You're nothing more. Think back to what you did 5 weeks ago. You can't remember. A normal person remembers it.
Oh.
Or someone has like memory retention problems, like amnesia. Like, can't remember what you did a few months ago. Neither can a synth.
So anyway, after that lengthy discussion talking about who and who isn't a synth, the question still remains: who is? Are any of us real? Are we all synths? Who knows? But till then, this has been all Outta Stimpaks podcast. It's been a pleasure, and until then, we'll see you at the next bi-weekly episode.